Measuring economic growth. When we're thinking about measuring the size of an economy, we quickly realise that we cannot measure that directly. How would we measure the value of a field, a person, or a machine? Is an economy with 6 people, a field, and 1 machine bigger than one with 3 people, a field, and 2 machines? So instead of trying to measure the resources directly, we measure the output produced by all the resources in the economy. More output means the economy is bigger. But we don't measure the size of an economy using volume of output produced in units. This is because units can be different. Instead, we measure the total value of the output, adding up the price of all units produced. Knowing the size of an economy, measured by the total value of output in one time period, is useful, especially when we want to compare 2 countries. But we often want to know not just about the size, we also want to know about whether an economy has grown. To measure growth, we need to compare the output from 2 different time periods. An increase in output over time is economic growth. We can see this graphically on charts showing total output over time. Growth is indicated with an upward sloping line. If output was to fall, then the economy would have decreased in size, and then the line would slope downwards. If this fall happens in 2 consecutive quarters of the year, we would say the economy is in a recession. We often tend to show the rate of economic growth as a percentage though. When we see this percentage data graphically, it's important to remember that falling rates of growth don't mean the economy is shrinking. They mean the economy is still growing, but growing at a slower rate. If an economy was shrinking, like in a recession when output is falling, this would be seen with a negative growth rate. Okay, so let's start comparing some countries. Country B and Country C. Here's their output in year 1. Here's their output in year 2. Which country has grown the most? You're probably thinking, Country C. But what if I told you that in year 1, both countries made 2 boxes priced at £500? In year 2, Country B made 3 boxes priced at £500. So they have produced more output. But in Country C, they still only produced 2 boxes, except they had really high inflation, so these boxes are now priced at £1,000. Because when we go to the factory gate to collect data on output, we're collecting nominal data. This is not adjusted for inflation. We're collecting data in current prices, the prices of the day. So if we want to look at economic growth, we need really to look for real data. This is data adjusted for inflation, where we use constant prices. So we might decide to use year 1 prices of £500 a box. So this is fine for Country B because they haven't had any inflation. However, in Country C, we need to wind back the prices to year 1 prices and correct the data for inflation. And we can see this country has not had any real increase in output. Here's two further countries, country D and country E. Here's their output in year 1. Now, which country would you prefer to live in? Which country do you think you'd have a better standard of living? You're probably thinking country E. It's produced twice as much output. However, what if I told you that in country D, you would be one of just 2 people? However, if you lived in country E, you'd be one of 1,000 people. Suddenly looking at total output doesn't seem so helpful in terms of judging living standards. You might be better looking at output per capita. This is where we take total output and divide it by the population. This would mean you'd have £500 in country D, only £2 of output per head in country E. So using per capita data tends to be better if we're interested in living standards. However, this isn't the full story either, because we don't know about how the income in the country would be distributed. For that, we want to look at the Gini coefficient. For example, if one country had the distribution in country D like this, you might actually be better in country E. The Gini coefficient is a story for another day though. Here's some data for country F and country G. In year 1, their economies have been the same size. They've both produced £1,000 of output. But the way they've done it has differed. In country F, they produced 2 £500 boxes. In country G, they've produced 1,000 £1 boxes. So there is a difference when we're looking at economic growth and output between countries producing high value items, potentially at a lower volume, and countries producing low value items at a very high volume. This might be useful when you're looking at the impact of economic growth within a country, particularly the impact on the environment and employment of increasing output. Now, so far, we've assumed that countries all use the same currency. That's not, of course, the case. So if we need to compare countries, we need to think about converting the output from one currency to another. So if I did this on a Monday and used a market exchange rate, such as this, in converting country J's £1,000 output into dollars, it would appear like country J has produced $2,000 worth of output. However, market exchange rates can change. So if something happens between Monday and Tuesday, if I did this task on Tuesday, when the pound has depreciated, it might look like the country's only made $1,500 of output. This is a problem. So using market exchange rates, which are influenced by lots of other factors, to convert economic output data is maybe not the best approach. Here's an alternative approach. You could look at what you could buy with your money in the different countries. If you can buy a basket of goods for £100 in country J, and the same basket of goods in country K costs $300, then you could use a PPP, or purchasing power parity exchange rate, of £1 equals $3. This is showing the parity of, or the sameness of what you can buy between two different countries in terms of your purchasing power. So if we use this to convert the data for country J, they had produced $3,000 worth of output in year 1. So to recap, if you're measuring the size of an economy, you want to look at the total value of output. If you're interested in growth, you need to look at the rate of change in the total value of output. But you should use real output, measured with constant prices and adjusted for inflation. If you're more interested in living standards, you might be better examining the value of output per capita or per head. If you're comparing data internationally, such as the total value of output, you'd be wise to use PPP or purchasing power parity exchange rates. And to consider the impact of changes in output and economic growth, you might be interested to examine differences in value and volume. But the real question is increasing the amount of output, getting more of these boxes, actually making us happier? Is this actually improving our standard of living? Maybe not. That's the real question.